And so what we're doing as we start to land the plane, so to speak, is get the perspectives of those who have been around the block a few times, so we can take appropriate action once we get back to our offices. So what I'm going to do, instead of introducing them myself, I'm going to let them, the panelists that is, introduce themselves and give their perspectives, just a highlight or two based on what you've experienced up to this point. So if you would just share a little bit about yourself and what you're thinking about right now, given where we are in the conference. Please, Adam.
So I'm Adam Gibson. I'm the Director of Workforce Planning at Capita. I've been doing workforce planning for a number of years. So Capita, for its size, 70,000 people, actually workforce planning is something new for an organisation of its size. So we're starting it there, but I've been doing this for a while. So before that, I was the head of workforce planning at the Metropolitan Police. 50,000 people, all located in London, very complex, and implementing workforce planning teams, bringing about a methodology and trying to make a difference to the organisation is what drives me. The passion for me is, and I think it's almost been part of the theme for what we've talked about throughout the past few days, is connecting engaged people to meaningful work.
Thanks, Adam. Sophie?
Yeah, so my name is Sophie Rwegera. I work for the International Committee of the Red Cross based in Geneva. I'm the head of People Analytics. I've been in this role for the last 3 years, and I worked at the ICRC since 2011. For those of you who might not know the ICRC, this is a humanitarian organization which work in conflict zones like Syria, Afghanistan, Yemen. We have 18,000 staff throughout 90 countries. Workforce planning is critical for us because it enables to deliver humanitarian work. So far at this conference, I really enjoy the connection and all the interesting discussion we had during networking times, but also throughout the panels, throughout the sessions. And I will, for me, one of the takeaways is really the ethics around people analytics. What you can do, what you cannot do to promote a better people analytics function in your organization.
Thanks, Sophie. Antony?
Oh, hello. So I'm Antony Ebelle-ebanda, and I'm currently the regional head of workforce transformation analytics for Allianz, in looking after the European region, the Middle East and Africa. I've been doing this type of role for quite some time. You know, when Al says going around the block, I think he's talking about himself, but it includes us as well. For me, one of the things that I'm really interested in this conference was really shrinking the world in terms of the people analytic community. I've been spending a lot of time in the US, and now I'm back in Europe, and seeing people being able to interact. There were some people from Argentina, from the States and so forth, having this ability to share good practices across the various continents, for me, is something very important. So engaging people is quite good. When Sophie was talking about in terms of the importance of workforce transformation and analytics for us, Allianz is a massive organization, 140,000 people, but we haven't done that much strategic transformation. And for us, doing it now is something that's going to enable us to get the business still ahead of the competitors. So it's a very fundamental work that we have to do right now whilst we're still successful.
Got it. Well, thank you. And I want to, the reason I asked that and I staged that is that we have all this language flying around. We have people analytics, we have workforce planning, we have digital transformation. And what does it mean, number one? And how are we actually making it real? How does it actually come to life? So my question to the panelists, and we don't have to go through each one of you, however, if you have a comment, please share, is number one, do you have a digital transformation or business transformation initiative going on right now? And if so, just give it tidbit or two, how are you supporting that? Are you actively involved? Are you more of a customer of that transformation? Adam, do you want to start with that?
Sure. So those of you who are familiar with Capita's journey over the last 18 months will have seen it gone from struggling at the point, at a similar point in time to Serco collapsing, to a point where we're now moving into a period of success. A lot of transformation required for that, fundamental to the organisation itself, and there is absolutely a digital element to that. One simple one. Well, I sort of say simple. It's easy to say, but actually you'll be aware of the complexities around it. So we're going through implementation of Workday. That will move us significantly in terms of having all of our people on a single platform. We're predominantly based in the UK, but we've got sites globally, so we will get all of our people in a single place. And there's lots of things that need to be done to try and group the workforce into a way that makes sense. So one of the things that we're doing at the moment is creating job families. So we're supporting that activity because that will allow us to make the right decisions around our people. So in fairly simple terms, that's the kind of activity that we're conducting at the moment.
Interesting. Now, just so you all know, the audience as well, how many of you are in organizations, say, of 5,000 or more employees? Okay, so most of you. How many of you have a digital or business transformation initiative going on right now? So I imagine all of you. So we're in the right room. That's good. So who among you are going through, and you call it job family, or just kind of redefining how you're clustering workers? So again, a fair number of you. So it sounds like that is a journey that we're all on in some form. How about you, Sophie? Are you looking at new job families or new way of classifying workers?
Yeah, definitely. So I would say the ICRC is going under digital transformation, and I must say we put in place a couple of things. First, a mapping of the existing skills to really assess our ability of the workforce to go through the digital transformation, and also through this mapping we can see where are the gaps and how we could fill in the gaps by recruiting, providing training. We also provided a lot of trainings to our workforce regarding digital, all technologies, and we created what we call the Big Business Intelligence Group. It's a cluster of all analysts across department and division and countries, where we share best practices, where we discuss challenges in the data management, where we discuss data integration. So we created some data sources where we could dump operational data, financial data, HR data, and we could triangulate them to make better decisions. I must say, to conclude a bit about this digital transformation at the ICRC, the nature of our work is shifting a lot. In the past, the humanitarian worker used to go to Somalia delivering, rice bags. Today, because of the VUCA environment, it's more and more difficult to be on the ground. So technologies are really important. So, for instance, during the war in Syria, we had medical teams based in London or in the US contacting the people on the ground and doing medical surgery through Skype. We also had a team on the ground analyzing all the environment with videos and then building virtual reality tool so we could better assess the humanitarian need. Also in the past, the humanitarian aid worker used to go somewhere to dig a well. This is, not always possible. So now we have communities on Facebook who would indicate where are the wells, where are the points where you can get water. So for all this, we need different skills in the pipeline.
As you have me reflecting on a couple things. Number one, I'm never going to look at my internet connection speed the same way again. Someone out there is doing surgery over Skype. So I think if it's okay if I get disrupted, it's okay. Anthony, I'm going to actually toss a question around my second point, because inherent in what Sophie was sharing is this notion of digitization and digital transformation. It's a bit of an esoteric concept to many. So at Allianz, obviously you're a massive organization. You have many different business units, and maybe they look at them, this digital transformation the same way. But two questions. How does the organization look at digital transformation, and how do you personally look at digital transformation given your lens?
Yeah. So there's one thing that you mentioned before in terms of, are we all customers, or how are we involved in the digital transformation? The way we look at it at Allianz is digital transformation is driven by the business. Mm-hmm. The different corporate functions, HR included, are supporting that effort to change the organization. So when we're looking at digital, we're saying digital from a change in skills of the people, digital in change of the system that we're using and the approaches that we have. So from Allianz, the digitalization is the overarching concept, as you say, esoteric in some ways, but that we bring down to some very concrete actions for the different parts of the business. Mm-hmm. From HR specifically, when I'm looking at it with my lens as a HR practitioner, it's how do I get the right approach so that I can get the right people with the skills to help them in that change. But when I look at this, I'm also saying, I understand what the people are, but Sophie mentioned also, we need to understand the gaps and how we're going to be closing those gaps. Does it mean we're going to be reskilling people? What's the effort required? Is it really relevant depending on what we are? Or are we going to go externally, bringing that skill set ready-made from the outside so that we can actually accelerate that transformation and bring that digitalization to fruition much more quickly.
Got it. Yeah, and by the way, I have a set of questions that I'm teeing up, but if you have questions as we go, by all means, raise your hand and we'll include them. So, because there's a few things that I really, on behalf of everybody here in this room, certainly, but on behalf of everyone who's participating in this conference and in our broader community, is this idea that digital transformation, as cool as it sounds, is misunderstood, and it's ill-defined, and it's creating opportunity, but it's also creating anxiety. So my question, I'm going to go over to you, Adam. How are you all defining it? Is it merely putting a process in some technology that automates it, and correct me if I'm wrong, that is going to affect the work somebody actually does at the end of the day. So can you?
Yeah, I mean, it's fair. Digital is one of those throwaway terms that seems to just capture everything. Transform it simply by appending the word digital to it, and it becomes something different. Actually, digital is all-encompassing. That is our lives now. Things have evolved for that to be the case. It wasn't, it wasn't a flick of the switch, but actually, in reality, for digital, it is. So, I suppose I look at it in terms of three different strands. There is the transformation of the service itself, and service transformation, in and of itself, is typically about reducing demand, and that's when I look at things for workforce planning, that's where I look first, rather than the old approach of let's just create the capacity to fill the new world. It's a case of looking at where demand can now be reduced. So by automating things, by improving processes through digitization, you are reducing your demand levels. You've then got the customer, and this is less of a transformation, but that customer evolution. The people that we serve in Capita is a massive collection of businesses delivering different services. So we've got our customer base is immense, and their expectations have evolved over time, and they've evolved based on operating in a digital world. Their expectation is your phones, your tablets. That's what they've grown up using. We've moved away from something that was a work-centric world of technology where 20 years ago, the best technology you would find would be in the workplace, and then at home you'd be trying to emulate that. Things are the other way round, and what people expect is what they see at home in their daily basis. So those expectations evolved, and therefore we need to be able to transform digitally so that we're comparable and we're meeting their expectations. And then that final part is around our employees. Not only are they also our customers, so they've got those same expectations in terms of digital, but they also need to be able to use the new work that we create as a result of this digital transformation. So when I look at digital transformation, I'm looking at those three components as separate but critically joining entities.
I really love the way you shared that, and it reminds me of the CHRO at Dignity Health in the States, who talked about one of his key measures of success is, do I give people time back? Whether that be leaders, HR, business partners, am I elevating, to your word, the capacity of individuals by the initiatives that we're putting forth, not only in HR, but through the tools that we're providing with IT and so forth. Is that how everyone defines it, looking at it? Like if we digitize a process that was formerly manual, we by definition have more time to do other things. Is that a fair statement for everybody? Yeah. Does anybody have a working definition for digital or digital transformation in your organization? Yeah, about 50. Now, and I'm just, I really hang my hat on this notion. The beginning of wisdom is calling things by their right names. I don't know what the heck we're talking about half the time. So Sophie, what are your impressions? How do you define it? What does digital transformation look like to you and Red Cross?
So the digital transformation at the Red Cross is a bit of a buzzword. So we created actually 1 year ago a digital department. Yeah, and this department is looking at all the processes across all other departments to see where they could automate and could change the way we work. But I would say my experience just show that actually it's about digital culture. The way every single employee is using technologies in his or her daily job. I think this is the key, the digital culture that we need to distill, to put in place into the organization. This is, I think, really key, because at the end of the day, we talk about the employee experience. And if for the employee, the objective is just to have new tools to reduce costs, so at the end of the day, not to develop the employee, it starts to become a challenge for the organization. So the priority for us is really to promote the culture, this digital culture of new technologies. We created labs where anyone from any department with a specific question, willing to change the process, willing to improve the process, so we could dedicate much more time for meaningful work, could go to this lab with researchers and talk about the challenge, daily challenge, and how we could find quick win through technologies.
Wow. Now, how are you, that's super cool, how are you involved with that group, or are you? Is that a separate group, or are you involved with that lab?
So the lab is, we are aware of all the, I would say, the processes going on and all the requests. That's why we also created the BIG, to have an overview of all the requests and to make sure that we don't create silos, processes that do not connect each other, because otherwise it would be a nightmare for the employee to have different tools for different processes. So we have this BIG, which ensures the overview of all new processes, all new technologies, all new changes. And we have this lab who is independent. They do whatever they want, but they need to report to this community to make sure that we're aligned and we create something consistent and meaningful for the employee.
Got it. So it's about a mindset shift through education and experiences and so forth. One of my takeaways from this event in particular, and it's a temptation to compare North America and Europe, and sometimes it's appropriate to do so, but I'm actually seeing it happen on both sides of the pond, where we're looking at ourselves more as enablers / facilitators, as opposed to this group that's chasing our internal. Oh, you're doing digital transformation, let me help. Oh, you're doing HR transformation, let me help. It's like we're now integral to actually making this happen. So, yeah, you at Allianz, Anthony, what's happening with you and your collaboration with either a digital transfer? Is there a digital transformation team there? I mean, and what other groups are you working with?
So we work with all of the business lines, and the reason why we're doing that is because from the top there was a mandate that said we need to stay relevant to our employees because our employees are a reflection of our customers. And as Adam mentioned, digitalization is now part of everybody's life. So if you're thinking about the insurance world, it's been, stagnant is maybe the wrong word, it's been pretty consistent in the way they've been doing things for quite a long time. And now in order to stay relevant, they have to embrace the new tools that people use on a day-to-day basis so that they can still provide services in connection with those tools. So from our standpoint, we have a digital team. We call it workforce transformation team, that then goes with a very structured approach and speaks to everybody. So we're talking about the job families. We're talking about this is what we've done in the past. But if we've got the robotic process automation, some of those tasks are going to be done by robots. But the other employees that we have doing other elements, how are we going to be going about to make sure that they can do so? So every single business leader gives us their feedback, and then we try to work with the training team, with the IT teams to bring in place the structure to help people actually move towards where we're trying to get to. One of the big examples that we have is we went to every single individual in some of the entities, and we created a digital passport for people. So once we've identified all the roles, the managers say, Anthony is working on creating claims for everybody, but we know that it doesn't have the skills in Excel and Access. So his digital passport is such that to make sure he's going to be able to come with us along the journey that we're embarking on, we need to give him a course in Excel and Access, and hopefully he's going to reach the standard that's going to allow him to do those more meaningful activities and being part of the transformation. So to go back to your answer, we're speaking to every business line from an HR perspective. We have a plan and a structure to address the gaps and the challenge that we see for people, and then we work with the training team to bring in place some specific modules and training programs to help the people going there. Now, I always say we need to live in the world that we live in. Not everybody is going to be able to actually change the way they've done things. But what we also try and do is try to accompany those people and try to find them some other ways of doing things as well. So it's not like all rosy, but we try to look at all the different elements of that transformation when you actually.
So what I'm hearing too is you're an enabler. You're not only enabling the organization to better understand its workforce, you're enabling employees to understand themselves and the potential paths that they could take, yeah? So we've been talking about digitalization, and we've already started touching on it, this notion of workforce planning, because obviously if you're digitizing processes, you're bringing digital tools to the fore, that's going to affect individual capacity, but it's also going to affect capacity in the aggregate. It can and should be affecting how we recruit, how we prioritize recruiting, how we develop people, and so forth. So, Adam, how are you looking at workforce planning? Are you even looking or using that term?
I live and breathe the term workforce planning. So that's absolutely my focus of activity. And the start point for me, sort of for all of those elements, the start point is what's the organisation trying to do? What does the organisation want to be and why? And it's the thing that can make the inclusion or absence of that is what will make or break a digital transformation. If an organisation is terming something digital transformation and it's just simply trying to put in some technology, that's not the same thing. If you are fundamentally looking at an organisational strategy and you know the direction that you're going in, the digital transformation is part of that. That then becomes embedded into the culture of the activity that you're trying to do in relation to both demand reduction through automation. We're looking at that very heavily, but also into what you're going to do in relation to your people. That then becomes embedded into what the people who are already there want to be and what you're trying to bring into the organisation. And if you're clear about that, then that then becomes what you are planning against. You are planning to create an organisation that is doing the activity that it wants to do and has the capability and capacity to be able to support that. That is your start point. That's where you move to. And if you've created that golden thread that goes all the way from the organisation's values and purpose, all the way through its goals, its strategy, down to the execution of the workforce, then that is the focus of what I'm doing on a daily basis.
Fantastic. Who here is, one second, I'll run over there to you. Who here is doing workforce planning? Okay. Who here has a working definition and or a model by which that supports their workforce planning process? A lot less confident hands. You know, again, defining things, having mental models to align around. I am now going to, is there another mic around, or is this the only one? Should I hustle over? I want to toss this to you so bad, and I'm going to behave and just skip over to you.
Thank you. So we've been talking about workforce planning and what work's going to get done and how that work's going to get done. So the ability to have clarity and visibility of what skills and capabilities are going to be needed in the future, for me, is key. So I was interested to hear more from Sophie. She mentioned mapping skills. I think for me that is an essential sort of data point for workforce planning for the future. If you could talk more about how you've done that and any obstacles you found.
Yeah, so we realized when we embarked into the digital transformation that to be honest, we had no clue about the mapping of the skills, of the existing skills. So we created a year ago a really basic functional competency. It's a form embedded into our HR system that allows anyone in the organization to update this profile in terms of the skills. So you could be, I don't know, a lawyer, but with strong data analysis skills. You could be a doctor, but with a strong communication skills. I mean, so anyone could update the skills, and the skills can be reviewed by the direct manager or the technical supervisor. The skills are not linked directly to the performance form, because we really wanted to have this, I think we wanted to have honest feedback. We wanted to have really this exchange when we could discuss the opportunity to grow. So there's this really basic functional competency framework that we implemented across all departments, all countries. So now we are able to see what are the existing skills in the pipeline and what are the missing ones to achieve our strategic goals. And we combine that with HR trends, so looking at the demographic data, the people who are going on retirement, looking at the retention data, who are the leavers. So looking at if the leavers are actually the one with the most critical skills that you need to achieve your digital transformation and ultimately to achieve your strategic goals. So it's how we try to triangulate as much data as possible and to do some regression analysis, factor analysis, to see if we could correlate some of the factors and some of the points together.
Very good, very interesting. Hey, Anthony, and I'm going to take a step from that, and I'm going to go back to the notion of workforce planning and skills development. So, as we transform processes and go digital, again, we're getting a better definition of what that means, I think, collectively. But it is essentially going to shift the skills that are required in the future. And Sophie just alluded to that. In other words, if we identify the work right now and we identify the skills right now, there's a host of underlying assumptions. Can anyone share what some of those assumptions are? And I'll give you a hint for what I'm looking for. The beginning of wisdom is calling things by their right names. Are we accurately defining our capabilities right now through our skill taxonomy? Are we understanding the adjacencies of what those terms mean right now. In other words, what other capabilities that we can afford. You know, again, I'm of the notion, and I have this role to play in our space where I believe we're at a 2 of where we can be in 20, 30 years' time in terms of the quality of our data and the insights we can generate. So my question to you, and Anthony, if we can start with you, is are you looking at skills mapping? And you said you are, but when you talk about the aggregate workforce planning, you know, are you going out and recruiting people with certain sets of skills that are more flexible, you know, that they're more adaptable? And it's a leading question, you know, because I know many, and I'm going to give you like Microsoft transformed its culture based on growth mindset. So they're assessing and developing and recruiting for people who have a growth mindset, you know, and that's not a hard skill. So you know, they're at Allianz, and you're doing workforce planning. Are you looking for more flexible skill sets? You want me to mumble that again? Flexible skill set, adaptable.
Yeah, I think there was something that was mentioned before. I can't remember if it was Adam or Sophie, but I don't know if we're looking for adaptable skill set. We're more looking for adaptable individuals, because one of the big elements is we're all making plans based on things that we know now. But as we've seen over time, like for example, the lifespan of an application, it used to be like 5 to 10 years. Now it's like, it gets developed in 2 months, in a year, 2 years, it becomes obsolete. So the kind of like the life cycle of transformation is much shorter. So there are things that we're looking at right now that might not be relevant in a year or two. Right. But we still have to bring individuals who are comfortable with this uncertainty and adaptable enough to embrace whatever new challenge comes to them in terms of acquiring new skills, acquiring new ways of working. So like we've got like ecosystems, we've got agile methodology. Before in insurance, you had your silos and that's the way things are. Now we bring different parts of the value chain of the insurance product design from inception to the end. We get them to work together. In 6 months, they roll out a product and boom, then they can go somewhere else. So to answer your question, we're looking for adaptable individuals that can rise to the uncertainty of this constant evolution that we've got now with the fast-moving pace of digitalization.
And I'd absolutely echo that. I mean, this isn't about, when you talk about flexibility, it isn't about recruiting accountants that you want to train into doctors and having that kind of flexibility. It's not that at all. Right. The skills will broadly group themselves together. So yes, the taxonomy probably isn't correct, and what we call things now is probably not what we will call certain things in the future. But the groupings that those sit in, and the way that they've been combined together, actually that's not going to change fundamentally. Right. And people who are doing something within a broader skill set, we're looking for their ability to be able to grow and develop and flex within that capability, and to become the best that they can be at the thing that they are wanting to be, rather than the ability to make something that something that's completely fungible. You're that one day and then you're something else in a short period of time.
Absolutely, yeah. Again, well said. Sophie, I'm going to toss this over to you, because the idea that we're going to figure this out internally, we've talked about over the day and a half that, hey, we're going to rely on partners. Like, we're not going to build this taxonomy. And I know LinkedIn, and having participated in Talent Connect last fall, is they're trying to get more involved in identifying what we would call, or many call, soft skills or behavioral skills. So as you do workforce planning and facilitate digital transformation within the Red Cross, are you looking at workforce planning or recruiting or developing these soft skills, behavioral skills to a more extent, or are you focused more on the technical or harder skills?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty aligned with what my colleague just said. I think we are looking at adaptable individuals, but we are really focusing on soft skills. So the bulk of our activities is to protect civilians in a conflict zone. And when we recruit these people who will deliver humanitarian aid, we recruit based on this, I would say, soft skills. We have a grid with key soft skills that we look at it. and to make sure that they are adaptable, flexible, that can learn quickly. And also, we also look a lot at the emotional intelligence, creativity, ability to solve problems easily, because where you're in a complex environment, like in a remote village in South Sudan, and you need to act quickly, you need, creativity and really strong problem-solving skills. Yeah. So I would say soft skills is critical, because we know that we can automate at least 25% of the current jobs. This is the OECD report of 2016. So at least across all industries, we could automate 25% of the existing jobs.
Is that Red Cross or is that
no,
macro?
At least this is a global research.
Yeah.
So we know that some of the jobs would be replaced by robots, but we know that emotion would never be replaced. So for us, it's critical.
Got it. No, thank you for saying that. And there's so much we can go on, down that road. Mark, I'm going to tee up a question for them so they can answer as I sprint over, and you'll be the final question from the group. Then I'm going to ask you for closing comments. The question that I want to toss to Antony real quick is the future. So, what do you wish that is going to happen at Allianz that is not happening now? Because we can paint a good picture about this, but we all know we're in challenging times. We're figuring it out. It's not like, oh, Google's doing that, so we're just going to press resend, and there's an underlying assumption that they're doing this perfectly and that it's appropriate for. So, what do you hope is going to happen over the next 12, 24 months for you all to be more successful in this area?
So for me, personally, I would hope for a systematic approach to strategic workforce planning. Because when we're talking about Allianz, it's I call it an amalgamation of lots of different entities. And people still sometimes have the mindset of my kingdom is my kingdom. I know that some people in the group want to do things in a certain way, but I'm not ready to do that yet. So from my selfish point of view, my measure of success would be to have a systematic, scalable approach to strategic workforce planning in the whole of the Allianz group. It's a bit similar to what, to a certain extent, Singapore is doing. I mean, in Singapore, they put strategic workforce planning at a country level. If you're thinking about that, when they try to build a subway, they say, you know what, we need to have engineers for the next 10 years. So at university, we're going to put those programs. So they have something from the top that permeates to the whole of the country. So to me, if I was living in what I call the dream world, is if we could have the same thing happening at Allianz, so that those kind of projects could be done all through the whole organization.
Thanks. Really great debate, and I've learned an awful lot. Adam, you know nothing, though I know nothing about this kind of topic as well, so it's great to listen to you all. I wanted to follow up on Sophie's point. I think it's really important that you start considering automation and the presence of machines and bots and things like that. Is that necessarily a part of the way in which we should be planning our workforce? Should we be considering bots as employee types for the future? And if so, how do we then start to think strategically about where this kind of technology will be deployed, where we don't necessarily need people in the future?
Yeah, really good question. I think it's about the culture of your organization and your company. For instance, in my organization, it will be difficult to acquire and to have robots working with us, but in 10 years' time, with the limited resources and growing humanitarian needs, there are opportunities to have robots. So now to consider robots in the workforce, this is, I would say, an important point to discuss also with the top managers and to see which kind of culture you have in your current organization and how you want to combine robot and people. And this is also a way to connect with the strategic goals, but also the DNA of your organization. Are you ready to have robots? Or is the workforce ready to welcome robots? I mean, a lot, and I would say I don't have the perfect answer, but this is something that you need to look at with every single organization, with your top managers, and to see the pros and the cons. And sometimes always good to pilot and to do really basic things.
Thank you. All right, Adam, bring us home. What are your closing comments and suggestions?
I suppose for whether you're looking at it from a digital transformation perspective or whether you're looking at it from another angle, the critical element to workforce planning is the tie all the way into the organisational strategy. The starting point is, what does that organisation want to be? For me, workforce planning is simply around, and successful workforce planning is simply around understanding where that organisation, that boat is going up, setting sail for that island. And workforce planning is simply around ensuring it's continuing on that island, adjusting the ship as the waves hit, as the wind changes, but keeping it going on that course. And that means that you will continue to focus on what the organisation wants to be on that strategy and still be able to flex with the day-to-day operational challenges that will happen. And don't try and separate the two, or else one will win over the other.
Outstanding. Adam, Sophie, Anthony, thank you so very much. Fantastic discussion. I appreciate it.